panel, a Shariah board, as it's known, interacts with the other players in the development process immediately leading up to the certification, the approval, and then in the periodic audit thereafter, and then the monitoring in the advisory process that's associated with maintaining approval. As many of you will know, and has been mentioned several times today, it is an established norm that every Islamic financial institution and every institution that offers or would offer putatively Sharia-compliant products or services has an independent panel of ethicists, jurists, legists, Sharia scholars that reviews the product and the services and the operations associated with it prior to its launch and after its launch periodically, culminating periodically in the issuance of a certificate of compliance, a COC, which takes the form of a fatwa, an ethical legal responsa, but is a certificate indicating that it's still compliant. That process has a lot of visible sub-processes associated with it and some that aren't as visible to all players. So we have rare opportunity here to have with us some of the leading members of such panels who can shed some light on that process. I think the first question, or set of questions with which we'll begin, is what are the considerations that that institutions and individuals concerned with the establishment and growth of Sharia-compliant financial institutions? What are the considerations, among the considerations that they should have in their mind when considering the process of establishing a Sharia board, of setting up good standards and processes for allowing the Sharia board to participate early with the other players in the design process and in maintaining the ongoing compliance and monitoring thereafter. We'll begin with Sheikh Nizam as before and move down, and perhaps I'll have something to say afterwards.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, if anybody of you likes to read something like that, there is in the AWOFI standards terms of reference for Sharia boards and conditions and all these things. So you can review it there. The Islamic financial institutions, we hear many times, why do we need these, weird scholars and these things and Sharia boards and so on and so forth, The issue is that if you are dealing in your own business, it is between you and God. Nobody will interfere. You are accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what you do. And you are supposed to do correctly and abide by the rules. However, you are only accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, if you are claiming publicly to the public that you are doing certain things, so there must be certain ways and means to measure whether what you are claiming is true or not true. And historically, since the Islamic financial institution started till today, the practice and the custom has been that these institutions have what they call them the Shariah Supervisory Board, and sometimes they are called other names and different names. So it is their duty to ensure in the initial stages, even before the company is incorporated, reading the bylaws and the articles of associations and everything. After that, designing the products and engineering them and the contracts and reviewing them. And after that also the application of these contracts, how they are applied and whether the conditions associated with these contracts are fulfilled or not fulfilled. So these are the duties that the Sharia supervisory they do. And usually in large institutions and companies and corporations, the Sharia boards are appointed by the General Assembly, not by the management of the company. So they rank in authority higher than the management of the company. and they report directly to the General Assembly with their report, with their annual report every year. So this is how these units or these bodies have been working, and they have passed the test of time. Now some people sometimes confuse the work of the Sharia boards, and like we hear today, what is their, would they act as board of directors? Never. They have nothing to do with the day-to-day activities in terms of decision making on whom to grant finance or not to grant finance, or amounts or money or these things. This is not their business at all. And if there is any ambiguity, you can make it clear in the terms of reference that this is not their job. Their job is to ensure that all the processes from the beginning, the contracts, the bylaws, the laws, the application of these contracts are in accordance with what the company is claiming that it is doing. And some people, they claim that, you know, there is a conflict of interest here, because these institutions are hiring these boards and they are paying for them. And this is not very accurate, because although they are paid and compensated, I mean, nominally, let us say, or in a way which is just like an honorarium to them, however, they are also required to say no, not only to say yes. Because some people, they think that, you know, I wrote recently in Reuters and BBC News, they were quoting some anonymous source of banking, saying that, you know, well, we look for Sharia scholar and we tell him this, and if he doesn't accept, we look for another one. They entitled it fatwa shopping. Fatwa shopping. So if 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 scholars, they don't accept, then the 11th one will give him a little bit more money and he will accept. This is what was written in that news release. So somebody called me from the press and said, what is your view? I said, well, let them please reveal their sources, so we will see who is this scholar who dares, after that the unanimous scholars of the Muslim world will say no, and he will say yes. And what will be the basis of his ruling? And actually this company or this bank is a fool if they do this, because they will be falling into reputational risk. Some product which nobody accepts and the general trend of scholars and of the scholarly community is not accepting, they bring some, I don't know, anonymous person or some, I don't know, you know, somebody from where, which is disadvantaged, you know, and they give him some compensation to accept this. And I said, please reveal to us. Let us see the live example. Who did this, so that we can respond. So, but you say anonymous source, anonymous banker. How can we respond to anonymous source and anonymous banker?
Anonymous response.
So anonymous response. Yeah. So, I mean, in my work of 35 years, I mean, review of the works of Sharia boards, and myself being involved in this since 1989, I have never seen, at least in my experience, any, you know, respected Sharia scholar who will dishonor himself and his community and his followers by just approving something for the sake of, you know, financial gains. You know, these people who are brought to this industry, this is not their major, you know, activity that they do. They are teachers, they are shuyukh, you know, they lead prayers and jum'ahs, and they are leaders of their communities. So they cannot do such things which will dishonor them and will be unethical. Of course, I am not saying they are infallible. They are human beings. Some of them might be subject to some shortcomings, but it will be known in the community if they are to allow something which is, you know, preposterously against the Sharia or against the laws or against the norm of Islamic finance, which, as I mentioned today morning, now we have the basic rules, we have it, you know, the standards and these things. So how much he can deviate, how much he can go. See, in Islam, we do not have hierarchy.